Ladies, gentlemen, and exiles of all ages, as the general player base pushes further and further into the deeper parts of the endgame in Path of Exile 2's early access, a constant question on every person's mind is how to get more currency. How do I make more and better orbs pop up so I can trade for my effective gear? Because something that happens way more in Path of Exile 2 than any other of the big ARPGs is that good gear requires trading. But not just good gear, sure, you can have a piece of random good gear drop, you can craft into good gear, but if you want the great gear, if you want equipment that is capable of the actual deep endgame in the game, you either need a metric ton of luck, or you need to be willing to get involved with the community trading system. And if you do that, you will need the currency to exchange for them, which for the first week or so was mostly exalted orbs, and has since then been converted to divine orbs for a lot of the more valuable items, and over this time divine orbs have just gotten more and more valuable as far as their conversion into exalteds. So those who have swapped their exalteds into divines early have actually gained a lot of value. That said, that is far from the final step. The other day we talked about some general strategies for juicing up your maps, getting yourself some enhanced chances at good drops from your maps themselves, but today we're going to get more in depth. We're going to talk deeper into the endgame itself, where things can get very, very valuable for your time, and we're going to talk about how to adjust your gear for this as well, because you can. So let's start with that part. Path of Exile 2 has a very large main difference from Path of Exile 1 in this regard, and it's specifically the increased rarity of items found modifier. This can exist on Waystones and maps, and this isn't very crazy to see, it's very common on these items, but where it gets funky is that this is also a modifier that exists on equipment for the player too. And while in Path of Exile 1, this general concept of a stat only applied to your gear, so if you stacked magic find, which is the term most people used for it, the result would be that you would get more uniques than someone who didn't. You wouldn't increase the quality of your currency, your orb drops. In Path of Exile 2, however, this applies not only to items, but also to currency, and it can do things like turn what would have been an orb of transmutation into maybe an exalted orb when it drops, or turn exalted into divines. It can turn a lesser jeweler's orb into a greater or even a perfect, and the point is that this is just a really big way that a lot of the top players are farming the raw currency, because you can get this modifier on gear on multiple different slots, and you can get a lot of it as a result. I've heard of people with more than 400% in this stat, and the result is just insane in the actual drop differences. However, it's worth noting that there is diminishing returns on this stat after around 85%, and that's important because, well, obviously as a gear modifier, that means it is taking up space that should be taken up by stats that would otherwise actually make you stronger. So you have to actively choose with your gear whether you want a higher chance to make better items drop to give you a higher chance to actually get the gear through trading, or if you want more player power the immediate moment. Generally speaking, the correct answer is a mix of the two. If you can get item rarity as a modifier up to around 85% combined without suffering too much outside of that, you're in a pretty great place for drops. It's a very good sort of middle ground. That said, if you are in a build that is just so strong inherently that your modifiers are basically a bonus, you can do some crazy things by just pure stacking the actual item rarity drop increases. The craziest that I've seen is taking the crazy unique shield that boosts the effect of the sockets inside of it, getting the corruption on it, which makes it have 3 sockets, and then using the soul cores that give you increased rarity of items found. This as a combo can give you multiple 100% of this stat completely on its own, and that said, the shield is a divine or 2 to trade for, and the soul cores are 4 divine orbs each right now, so it's a very, very meaty investment to actually do this. That said, that stat, once applied to your character, can give you increased drops from the whole game. So how can we use it best in the endgame proper? Last time we had a discussion about this stuff, I talked quite a lot about juicing your Waystones in general, using your lost towers, putting in tablets that would make your maps then drop way more loot in general, and then combined with item rarity can actually do quite a lot. Specifically though, for item quality, you ideally want maps that have the irradiated modifier for 1 bonus monster level, the corrupted modifier for another bonus monster level, and then some endgame activities on top of it, but also monster levels in general directly result in higher quality loot, so that's important to mention. You also would like bosses if you can, as bosses just have large drop tables as well. That said, last time we talked about juicing your maps, I mentioned the concept of instilling delirium into your Waystones to give them extra modifiers, but to be more specific about the ones that you want for this, distilled greed gives you more item find, distilled ire gives you more magic monster spawns, and both of these are relatively easy to find or cheap to trade for, but then distilled paranoia boosts rare monster spawns, which is generally the best one to aim for if you want to farm for currency and items with increased item rarity, as 3 distilled paranoia gives you a 45% boost to rare monsters on any Waystone that you put it on, but it does also add a cost to your mapping that depends on your current situation, regardless, of course. Another great item for boosting the item drops from each Waystone when you do them is the Omen of Sinistral Alchemy. This This makes your next orb of alchemy used give maximum prefix, rather than a mix of prefixes and suffixes as it normally is. On Waystones, suffixes are the things that make the monsters stronger. It gives them resistances, it gives them attack boost, stuff like that, whereas the prefixes are the things that give you boosted drops, increased item quantity or quality, increased chests, increased monster pack, increased magic or rare monsters, stuff like that. Generally speaking, suffixes on Waystones are good for increasing Waystone drop chance if that's what you specifically want, whereas the prefixes are good if you want good loot to drop from the map itself. So the Omen of Sinistral Alchemy is extremely good for forcing all of your alchemied Waystones to gain full prefix modifiers out of the 4 that you'll get from your alchemy, which gives you very high value if you want to actually use this to farm good items. That said, the Omen of Sinistral Alchemy as a result of this is something that will only go up in price as more players want to use it, and that goes doubly for the omens that are used for actual item crafting and creation too, as these are essentially just heavily specialized variations of the base crafting orbs. The Omen of Whittling lets you use the Chaos Orb to specifically remove the lowest level modifier you have on an item. The Omen of Corruption basically makes you apply a Val Orb twice to an item, which you could never otherwise do, so you have the potential for 2 powerful bonuses, but much higher RNG involved, of course. And then you get into tons of specifics, like making orbs only add or remove prefixes or suffixes, instead of like randomly choosing from the pile. The point is that these are really important to making the absolute perfect deep endgame items, and the people who want those the most and the fastest are, you guessed it, the ones with the deepest pockets, the people who are already as deep as you can get in the game without them, the people with thousands of exalted orbs, hundreds of divines, and so as more and more people reach the endpoint where they want these omens, their prices will just steadily rise, which makes them a great currency type target farm if you specifically want to trade and gain value for it. These come from the ritual activity, which you can find on endgame maps. You can put more of these on your maps with tablets specifically designed to boost rituals, as these exist and they drop from ritual maps too, and you can even get tablets that give you an extra reroll through the system too, which then gives you more chances at rolling these valuable items so you can actually pick them up. In order to maximize your omen rolls from the ritual rewards, you want to do all of the rituals on a map that you can. You want to take advantage of your rerolls through the ritual system too, and ideally you would be juicing your Waystones heavily when you go into maps that have rituals so you can get increased density and increased offering to use in the ritual exchange itself as a result. If you find one of these ultra valuable items but you can't afford it in your current run, you can always defer items through the ritual as well for the next ritual that you get, which will save them for next time. The other things that you can do to boost this all require Atlas Tree points specifically. The general drop boosters on the Atlas Tree itself are things like increased item quantity and rarity, which are all over through the tree and they're very nice, but things a lot of people maybe underestimate are things like increased magic monster spawns, increased rare monster spawns, and increased modifiers on your rares. As of the first major patch after release of the early access, they actually made it so drops from rares would scale upwards with how many modifiers they have, so this is a really neat bonus you can get specifically from the Atlas Tree. Outside of that though, there's the ritual specific section of the Atlas Tree too, and to access this, you need to beat the ritual boss, King in the Mists, in the endgame. You get access to him through randomly rolling access to the key through the ritual activity itself, the Audience with a King item. Killing him through this not only gives you a chance at rolling extremely high value uniques in itself, including a belt that is incredible for a lot of people and so is trading for a pile of divine orbs if you don't want to use it for yourself, or if you get a second copy, of course. After you kill the boss though, you get points to spend in the ritual section of your Atlas. The first points all increase the difficulty of the boss itself, because doing it at a higher difficulty is how you get more points to spend in your Atlas, and of course, better drop chances. The ideal points to spend for juicing the hell out of your rituals to get the most potential chances at having high value items like the Audience of the King or the Omens show up, tempting offers to give you a bonus reroll each map that you have rituals on, which is more chances at having the high value stuff pop up as a result, spreading darkness to make ritual maps always have 4 rituals on them, so the maximum gain of offering possible, and then ominous portents for 50% increased spawn chance of omens within your ritual favors, up into he approaches for increased chances of magic or rare enemies as your revived monsters within rituals, and then a bunch of bonus chance for your favors to contain the boss summon itself as well. All in all, to sort of put the different parts of what we've talked about here today together and try to simplify them down a little bit, the rarity of items found modifier on gear is incredibly powerful, and you should fit it in anywhere that you can without taking too much of a loss in power, at least up to like 85%. You can then build your maps and Waystones to specifically give you increased monster density, increased monster rarity, or increased items found, and rarity of items too, which in combination makes this go just a little bit nutty. You can add nodes in your Atlas Tree that have the same effect to make it even stronger, and you can use distilled emotions and omens on your Waystones to boost these effects even further. This not only makes uniques drop more often, but it gives you increased rarity of every every currency item that comes out, which is incredibly powerful. You can then use this in combination with rituals as an endgame activity to try and double up, using your gear and Waystone modifiers to boost general drops, but also monster density, and then the result of this is you can get omens from your rewards, which are very valuable to sell and trade right now, and will only get more so over time. That just about does it for today, and everyone. A discussion about how to maximize your earnings, your drop rates, and your currency rewards once you're a decent chunk of the way into the endgame for early access. I don't recommend doing a lot of this stuff unless you are comfortably in at least tier 11 or higher maps, with tier 15 being ideal, or just the highest tier that you can complete comfortably so it's actually properly rewarding for this. I hope you've all enjoyed this then, and hopefully it helps you out in your continued journey through Path of Exile 2's early access period. Like if you liked the video, subscribe to the notification bell for more, and most importantly, ladies and gentlemen, until next time, stay sweet.
Josh, Cotton, and Hollow with the videos, dropping the humor like a hammer on your tippy toes, bringing entertainment on a daily arrangement to take our insanity and turn it into entertainment. Yes, I said entertainment twice, to reiterate that it is nice to look into your faces on a mostly daily basis when you let us in your homes to make the whole world a stage. Goodbye.